Hi everyone, welcome to 2021 Esri Developer Summit. My name is Shane Lin, and with my coworker Simon Swall, we are going to show you how to create and use web tool and geoprocessing services in ArcGIS Pro using Python. And before I start, I'd like to give you an overview of this session. There are 5 parts of this session. The first one is introduction. In this section, I will talk about the concept of web tool and GP service, as well as the requirement of software and login account. The second one is design and author. This will cover how to design the data and how to author your script tool. The third part is run and publish web tool and GP service, followed by 2 demos presented by Simon. The fourth one is concern web tool and GP service. Also a demo presented by Simon. And the last one is advanced considerations. This I will cover publishing and consuming in a non-ArcGIS Pro environment. All right, so the first part is introduction. Let's look at the differences between the web tool and geoprocessing service. So from now on, I will use GP service for geoprocessing service. So web tool you publish from ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro to ArcGIS Enterprise. After publishing, there will be 2 components. The first one is a GP service lying on a Federated server. The other one is a portal item, and that web tool portal items lies in ArcGIS portal. So web tool has 2 main components. And for GP service, you also publish either from ArcMap or from ArcGIS Pro to a standalone server. And there's going to be GP service in this standalone server after publish. Notice if you publish from ArcMap, it's different than publish from ArcGIS Pro. They lies in different places on the server and behave differently. For more information about web tool and GP service, here are the reading. Next is requirements. For software, if you want to publish web tool, use ArcGIS Pro 1.4 or later. To publish a GP service, use ArcGIS Pro 2.3.1 or later. For server and enterprise, use 10.6 and later. But we always encourage our users to use the latest version of ArcGIS Pro and Enterprise to take advantage of the latest features. For login account, you need to publish a web tool, use our admin or customized publisher account. Now this customized publisher you can create in portal admin by using the default publisher plus add the option of publish web tools in the portal administrative privileges. Login account for GP service, you need to have a server connection file or a file with a .AGS extension. Make sure to log in this server connection file with an administrative account in order to publish. Next section is design and author. First, let's talk about the data preparation in the script tool. If you have a script tool, try to avoid hard coding of all the data paths and dependencies. Just like the parameter in the model builder, you want to expose some parameter so the user can provide their input. Now, to do that, you can use ArcPy to get parameter as text. But sometimes you do have this parameter need to hard code it, the data path. That's called project data. Just like in model builder, there's some unexposed parameter, project data. If you have that, then try to build it dynamically. To do that, you can use either os.path join to join the file path, or use sys.path.append to append your module. The reason for try this kind of platform independency is because some of the server is Linux flavor, and some is Windows. If you have a backslash or forward slash for those paths, sometimes it doesn't work for either of the platform. So use the dynamic platform independent path form will avoid this conflict. And the last one is about the performance. If you have intermediate data, mostly output data, try to write that into in memory. There are two benefits. In doing this. First, you will save some disk space for your output on the server side. And secondly, it enhances your performance of the service because in memory will run faster and save some overhead. If you want to know more about the data preparation and authoring of the script tool, here's the link. And the next one is about pre-publishing consideration. The first one is about input modes. So what is input mode? Input mode is what it looks like after the web tool or GP service is published. The three main input modes: user-defined value, choiceless, and constant value. User-defined value from the GUI, it looks like this. User can use the pencil tool to provide the input on the map, or they can provide the data from local disk, or they can use this drop-down list to access some layers, and those layers are coming from your table of contents in your ArcGIS map. So if you want to do that user-defined value as an input, try to use a non-layer object as an input. For instance, if you have a feature, try to use feature class as input. And the next input mode is choiceless. Choiceless looks like this. There's only drop-down menu and you have all the layers. Now notice those layers are, the source of those layers resides on the server side. And that comes from the client side during publishing. So when you publish the web tool, it will copy those data to the server and appears on this drop-down layers. So if you want to design your input as a choice list, make sure use layer objects for your input. The last one is constant value. Sometimes you do not want to expose the parameter, and you want to make sure this parameter is constant. So if you want to do that, set the constant value for this parameter using this function, ArcPy.createGPSD draft. SD draft means surface definition draft. And this function I will explain in a later publishing function. So within this function, there's parameters called constant values. And you can assign your tool name and parameter name for these constant values. And this is a list, so you can specify multiple parameters as a constant values. So to know more about input modes, here is the link. The second one is data reference and validation. So for all your project data, the project data, as I say, is non-exposed data, hard-coded data. And the layer input data and the constant, all three types of data, when you publish a web tool, if you do not register those data with ArcGIS server, the data is going to copy to server. But sometimes if the data is too big, it will end up spending a long time publishing the web tool or GP service. In that case, you want to use reference rather than copy the data. To reference the data, all you need to just register the data with ArcGIS server, and you can do that either through Pro sharing icon, or you can use Python function called ArcPy.add data store item. For the further readings, I have these links. Allows you to add the data to server. And next one is tool validation. Sometimes you have this validation script in your toolbox, and when you publish as a web tool, those validation scripts should behave the same way as you run from ArcGIS Pro. It will execute it by submit job, but double check with it. Next section is about Python publishing functions. First, let's talk about publishing functions for web tool. And before you call those functions, make sure you run the tool, get the correct result. The result object is essential for those published functions. So after you get hold of the result object, call ArcPy, the sign-in portal, and you pass the URL, the portal URL, and the credentials as parameters. And the second function is ArcPy that create GP SD draft. SD draft means surface definition draft. It's like a blueprint that saves all the server configurations and all the resources needed when you publish. And let's look at the parameter. So the first one is result object. That is obtained from the analysis. And the second parameter is the path to surface definition draft. Third parameter is service name, and the last is server type. For web tool, you need to use the server type my_hosted_services, all cap. Next step is a stage service. Now notice this has _server, just like the function upload surface definition. Those two are server functions. So stage service means you consolidate all the needed resources based on your surface definition draft. And then you will package as a surface definition file. So the parameter is surface definition draft and the surface definition. Last function is upload surface definition. Now this is the function doing the real publishing. All you need is you pass the surface definition and the server URL. Now for further reading, I have 4 links here for each function. Next, Simon is going to show how to publish a web tool. He will be using the copy data workflow. Simon?
Here I have my ArcGIS Pro opened, and it's preloaded with my emergency calls from the West Portland area. For this analysis, I want to demo to you guys. I want to see the hotspot of these emergency calls from this layer. And to do that, I have created a model tool and a script tool in this hotspot.tbx toolbox. This model tool will just show you guys the workflow of my analysis visually. You can see I'm using this hotspot analysis as the main analysis tool, and there are also a few other geoprocessing tools to process my input and output. I have 3 input parameters: the emergency calls layer for the collect event geoprocessing tool, the distance method for the hotspot analysis tool, and the output cell size for the nitro neighborhood tool. I have only one output parameter, which is the output polygon features. So let's close this one. And I have another hotspot script tools, which is essentially the same to my hotspot model tool. And let's take a quick look over there. For my hotspot analysis, I check out the extension Spatial because some of my tools will require that spatial analysis extension. Similarly to my model tool, I have my calls, raster, and distance method as my 3 input parameters. Next, for my collect events geoprocessing tool, I'm using this os.pass.join to construct my intermediate output. and I save it to the in-memory workspace to speed up the process. I have done so similarly for my hotspot, natural neighborhood, and reclassify tool. And in the end, for my raster to feature tool, you can see I'm still using the os.pass.join function, but instead of the in-memory workspace, I'm using the scratch folder as the inline variable. The reason is I want to save my output polygon shapefile to the disk instead of the in-memory workspace. So that's why I choose this scratch folder. And at last, I assign this output feature to my output parameter. Now I have my tools ready, and let's go to my publishing workflow. For my publishing script setup, I have a configuration file. This config originally just for demo purpose, and I have my username password saved in this config.py. For my configurations, I'm going to provide my portal and my federated server URL here with the username and the password. Because I would also demonstrate how to publish a GP service later in the session, I also provide the URL of my standalone server and the username password for that. I will also demonstrate how to publish data by reference. So that's why there is a path for my data on the server side, which I will demonstrate later as well. Now let's take a look at my publishing Web2 script. For my publishing Web2 script, I have import the relevant packages at first because I need to run my tool first. So I need to also check out the Spatial extension. I set up my workspace and Scratch workspace for my tool. Next, I need to sign into Portal to get my script authorized for my portal. To do that, I'm using this ArcPy.signIntoPortal function by providing the portal URL and the username password for that. After I sign into Portal, I am ready to run my tool. And I have this hotspot toolbox here, and I have my input feature class using this os.pass.join. Next, I provide the distance method, Manhattan, and the input raster. For my input raster, I use this ArcPy.management make raster layer to make a raster layer out of this TIFF file.
The difference between this input feature class and the input raster layer is, once again, the input feature class is a feature class pointing to a data on disk, and this input raster is a layer object pointing to a TIFF file on disk. So that's how you use the user-defined and choiceless input. If it's a feature class on disk, it's gonna corresponding to the user-defined input mode. If it's a layer object, it's gonna be a choiceless input mode once you have published.
Once I have my input ready, I import my toolbox and I create this result item by using ArcPy.hotspot script, which is the name of my script tool, and the hotspot, which is the name of my toolbox, by providing this input feature class corresponding to a user-defined input mode, input raster, which is a layer corresponding to the choice list input, and the distance method. Once I have finished run my tool locally, I'm ready to publish my web tool. To do that, first I construct my output service definition draft, and next I run this arcpy.createGPSD draft by providing the result item from my successful run above of the tool. I save the output to the draft file object, which is web2.sd draft. I define the service name as the hotspot web2.1 because I'm publishing to a federated server and I want my published item to be a web tool. So that's why I choose my hosted service, all caps with the underscores. For the constant value, because I do not want my users to provide this distance method Manhattan each time when they consume the web tool. So that's why I assign it as a constant value by providing the name of my script tool, hotspot script, dot, and the name of the parameter, which is distance m, for the distance method of my hotspot analysis tool. You can see I assigned a return object, draft underscore file return, which will be providing the messages after create GPSD draft. These messages is corresponding to the analyzer message you will be seeing if you publish from ArcGIS Pro user interface. And there will be error messages, warning messages if there are any, and all of them will be saved in this returned object, which I say save it as a draft file return object. Once I have my service definition draft, next I just have this if-else block to print out those messages, and I proceed with the stage service. Similarly, I construct the output as webtools.sd, and I use this stage service underscore server function to stage my service. Once my service is staged, I'm ready to publish my service definition by using upload service definition underscore server function with the staged service definition file I just staged and the URL to the server. I want to run my script in a debug mode so you guys can see especially what these returned messages look like. Now my script runs to the breakpoint, and let's take a deeper look about this draft file return object. What's information there? Let's drag up to show you guys this draft file return. And you can see it's a dictionary consisting errors, warnings, and messages. Because I did not publish, I did not reference my input data when I run and publish my tool. So that's why you will see data source used by my task script, hotspot script is not registered with server and will copy to the server. And I'll let my script continue to run to finish. And let's go back to the console. You can see I print out these warning messages there. So after that, you can see my service is successfully published. Just to double check, let's go back to my ArcGIS Pro. Go to my portal tab. And you can see this hotspot web tool 1 generated and published. Let's go to the task. You can see this the calls parameter is in a user-defined mode. Remember, if I go back to my script, when I run the tool, I provide the feature class on disk. That's why it's in a user-defined mode. For the raster for cell size, because when I run the tool, I'm providing a feature layer, a raster layer. So that's why it's in a choice list input mode. For the distance method, remember when I create a GPSD draft, I provide the constant value and for this distance method. So that's why you would not be seeing these constant parameters. You might notice why there is a third parameter output feature service name generated. This is a new feature to let users to generate output feature service when they are consume the web tools. And this is only available if you publish your analysis to your ArcGIS Enterprise. And it will not be available if you publish to your standalone server.
Thank you, Simon. Next, let's look at the publishing function for GP services. Publishing to GP services using the same function as publishing to web tool. The only difference is, first, in ArcPy that create GPSD draft, the parameter server type, instead of using my underscore hosted underscore services, you use ArcGIS underscore server for standalone server, and standalone server is what you use to publish a GP service. And the second difference is in ArcPy that upload service definition function, instead of using server URL, you use server connection file, the .AGS file, for publishing a GP service. For further reading, here are the links. Next, Simon is going to give a second demo about publishing a GP service. He is going to use the workflow of referencing data. Simon?
Here, in my publishing geoprocessing services script, similar to my publish webtool script, I have imported the necessary packages. I need to run the tool, so I check out the Spatial extension again. Everything here is very similar to webtools. The only thing different is instead of sign into portal, I use the connection file. So if you do not have a connection file ready, you can go back to ArcGIS Pro and go to your catalog pane. And here you can right-click servers and add a server connection there. Remember, once you have added your server connection, you need to change it to administrator connection. Once I have provided my connection file, I run my tool by import the toolbox. I provide the input feature class and raster layer object. And next is to run the tool to generate the history item. Next step is to add data store. So this is how you publish data by reference. I do not want my data to be copied to the server, so that's why I use this ArcPy.addDataStoreItem function by providing the connection file. The data store tab is a folder. Data is in a folder on my publisher machine. The connection name, I just give a hsref. Server path. Remember, in my configuration file, I have a UNC path, which is the server machine will access the data. And the client path, which is where my data is on my publisher machine, which is in my workspace. Once I have added my data store, I proceed to create a GPSD draft. Because this is a standalone server, the difference compared to webtool is here in the server type for the create GPSD draft function, I provide ArcGIS server all caps underscore. I provide the connection file, and everything else is pretty much the same. For the error messages and the warning messages, similarly, I will print them out if there are any. But I'm not expecting any of the messages because I registered my data to the server by using the AddDataStoreItem function. Next, I will do the stage service and upload service definition. For the upload service definition, I'm going to use my stage service, the service definition file, and the connection file instead of the URL. After I published my geoprocessing services, I want a clean server, so I removed my data store item. Let's give the script a run. Before I run it, I want to just add a breakpoint for my draft file return, just to show you guys what's the empty messages from my create GPSD draft function. You can see here from the console, my tool has run successfully, and I have added data store. Let's go to the debugger. And for this data file read draft file return object, if I expand that, you can see I have empty messages. I do not have any error, warnings, and generic messages because I registered my data to the server, so you won't see that copy data to the server warning messages. I'm going to let the script continue to run to finish the publishing process. You can see here my service is staged, my service is published, and my data store item has been removed. Just to confirm that, let's go back to ArcGIS Pro. For my server connection, let's give it a refresh. And you can see my hotspot service 2 has been published here. If I expand that, open the hotspot script 2, and you can see my user-defined cost layer, my choice list input for the raster. The constant distance method will not be shown. And because this is a standalone server, it's a geoprocessing service, there will not be the output feature service.
Thank you, Simon. So next is about consuming functions. There are two ways to consume a web tool and GP service. The first, the most common way is using ArcPy import toolbox or add toolbox function. By calling ArcPy.import toolbox, you pass the parameter server URL, which is in the form of server name, web adapter name, and services. Then you pass your web tool or service name. And last, you pass your login credentials. Now notice the credentials here are not as limited as you publishing to a web tool or GP service. It depends on how the web tool and GP service is shared. For instance, if the web tool is shared to everybody, the username and password, you just need to have user role. Then once you get hold of your web tool, you can run the task of the web tool, just like running as a desktop tool by calling ArcPy, the web tool name, the task name, and then pass all your parameters. And the second way is using REST API. This assumes you have server admin REST endpoint to log in. It's less common because mostly it's used for automation or for testing. By calling up a Python request module, you can get hold of a web tool or GP service. Then you pass your parameters using JSON modules. The below are two links for import toolbox and for REST API for further reading. Next, Simon is going to give the third demo about consume web tools and GP services using import toolbox. Simon?
Here in my consume web tool script, you can see I import the packages. I set override output to true just in case. I set my workspace. To import my toolbox, I need to provide the server URL of my web tool. To do that, I use this ArcPy.import toolbox function with this server URL and the name of my service, which is hotspot web tool 1, and the username password of that. Once I have import my web tool, which is a GP service in the backend, I provide the input for my web tool, which is a local cost feature class in my hotspot geo database. To run the tool, I use ArcPy.hotspotWebTool1, which is the name of my geoprocessing service of my web tool. Hotspot script, this is the task name. For the cost input parameter, I provide my input feature class I just defined. For the raster size, remember this is a choice list, so I provide this raster layer 1. I really want output feature service in this case, so I provide output feature service name here. This is an optional parameter, and you can just leave it blank or do not provide it at all. Next, I'm gonna let my tool run and waiting for a success response. This is a very simple loop. It's just waiting for a status 4, which is succeed status, and you can write a customized loop to provide you more information. Once I have got the output, I'm gonna save the result to this output object. I'm gonna print out my result feature service. Let's give this consumption script a run. And you can see here, my consume web tool has run successfully. I have my result feature service here, and let's take a quick look of my feature service. Here you can see my hotspot output feature series is published. And to take a quick look in ArcGIS Pro, if I go back here, I go to my catalog pane, the portal tab. You can see my hotspot feature series there. Let's add it to the current map. And you can see my output feature series is successfully generated. Now let's get back to my script. To consume a geoprocessing service, it's very similar. I have my packages imported. I import my toolbox by providing the URL of my server, the service name, username, password of my standalone server. And in this case, instead of providing a local feature class as an input for my geoprocessing service, I'm going to use a feature service I pre-published. To do that, I just use this make feature layer management to provide the feature service URL. Once I have that, I can run my geoprocessing service by providing the service name, the task name. I provide my input for the calls, the raster size, which is the trace list. I just put the string there. Next, I'm gonna let my script run and wait for a successful status. Once I have done that, I save the results to the output object and copy the result to this HS output, which is a local feature class in my Scratch workspace.
Thank you, Simon. Before I wrap up this session, I'd like to talk about some advanced considerations. Those include third-party Python libraries and also sharing from a non-ArcGIS Pro environment. First is about third-party libraries deployment for all the services. This is what I often ask by some users, like what if I have some third-party Python libraries I want to publish as a web tool? Well, if that's the case, on the server, it doesn't have those third-party libraries, so you cannot publish. You have to deploy those libraries first. So the following 5 steps will guide you to deploy the third-party libraries. First, you need to sign in command prompt as an administrator and change the directories to ArcGIS Server Framework runtime and then the Python script folder. Now in that folder, you need to clone the default Python environment with the new environment name. You can use conda create command and pass all these different parameters and specify with ArcGIS Server Framework runtime in the environment with the new environmental name. So once this clone environment name is ready, you need to activate it, the clone environment, by running pro swap and pass the new environment name. After that, you're ready to install your third-party library packages by running your conda install. So when everything is ready, restart your ArcGIS Server service instance. You can do that using Task Managers or using Windows Services panel. To know more about this deployment, you can read this link. The deployment in previous slides is for all the services on the server. What if I just want the deployment for one single service? You pretty much follow the same steps, except before you restart the service, go to your server REST endpoint and find the specific service you want to deploy. In the service properties editor, provide the name pair with variable name, conda, environment path, and then specify this new clone environmental path. And after that, restart the service, and you're ready to deploy for a single service. So up to now, all we covered is sharing from ArcGIS Pro environment. And you might want to ask, what if I want to publish sharing from ArcMap or Notebook? Well, for ArcMap, it's actually phasing out. For post-9, it will be totally deprecated. So we do encourage our users to publish sharing your web tool and GB service from ArcGIS Pro. But up to now, it's still supported. Publish from ArcMap, you publish it the same way as publishing to their own server in ArcGIS Pro, which means you have to use the server connection file to publish. The next one is about sharing from Notebook. It's getting more popular for users to use Notebook to access their service. So if you want to get hold of your service or publishing the service, you can do that from Notebook by using Python API, but you cannot publish from scratch. You have to use the service definition file. Then with that, you can either call ArcPy the upload service definition, or if you have the access to get hold of this server instance, you can use Python API and then call a function within the server instance. Here are the links below, allow you to read further about this server publishing in Notebook using Python API. Last but not least, if you have a service you would like to update frequently, make sure you save a service definition file for that service. Then you can use the system tool upload service definition, or use ArcPy the upload service definition function to publish. And that will save a lot of work by publishing from the scratch. So with that, that concludes our presentation. The slides will be available for you in the same section of the platform. If you are interested in download the demo resources, they are available in this link. Please also provide your feedback for the session by clicking the session survey link directly below this video. The session number is 12401. And thanks for attending.
Hi guys, my name is Simon, and we have Shing here as well. Feel free to type more questions, and I know we haven't replied all of them yet. And you guys can just add more questions, and we will answer them here if we haven't replied you in the Q&A.
Yeah, hi, this is Shing Lin, and I have some announcement before we go through all some questions. First of all, this this session will be available again after 24 hours, and all the slides for this session will be available on the presentation site. Also, if you want to view it later, this video clip will be available in YouTube after 30 days. Just search the title of this session, and you should be able to see that in YouTube. Also, we have a couple polls. We have 4 polls, and if you can answer those polls, that will help us to understand more about the usage and the behavior of our users. Also, after this session, if you have a question and if we have not answered, or if you have more questions, you can always go to Ask Our Experts public channels, and look for ArcGIS Enterprise channel or ArcGIS Pro channel. Simon and me, we're not going to be there, but they will pass the question. But if it's really urgent, they will set up the meeting. Okay. So we have a list here. I think it's kind of more relevant, and I think it's for you to know um, about the usage of publishing and consuming web tool. So the first one is, can both web tools and GP tools be used in customized widget and web app builder? And an experience builder, or does the experience builder not have custom widgets yet? Currently, experience builder is not it's not supported. The web tool is not supporting an experience builder yet. We're working on it, so it should be available in the future. The next one is, will web tools replace geoprocessing services in the future? They are separate. So if you have a standalone server, you can always publish as a geoprocessing service. I would not say you will replace. Okay, they will be there side by side. As long as you have one, if you have an enterprise, you can always publish a web tool. Okay. The other one is, can you provide a link to your demo script? I think we have a GitHub. We have a GitHub link, so all the slides and the script and all the materials in this session will be there. Will web tools replace? Okay, next one is, can you point us additional resources for documentation for the process of creating custom widget and web app builder? We do have a link to a widget creating a web app builder using widget. So here's the link. The next question is it possible to trigger a schedule, GP, or web tool from inside enterprise environment versus using like task schedule or cron tab? Right now, there's no mechanism you can trigger and schedule GP or web tool, but we're working on it, and it should be available in the near future. The next question is, what is best practice to choosing between using web tools or geoprocessing services to publish custom tool? Well, as I say, if you have if you have an enterprise, it's always published as a web tool, because the difference is, a web tool is you can, if you have enterprise and inside your organization, and all the users have access to the enterprise, and they can go into the portal, and then they can open inside the portal, they can open the web tool using the map viewer, while the GP service is just a standalone server. Okay, and also, like GP service, like in web tool, you can write the output as a feature service, while if you have a standalone server as a GP service, your output cannot be written to as a feature service unless the feature service stays on the portal, in enterprise. So there's several advantages of using web tool. That's why we provide this web tool. Okay. So next question is, can GP tools be used in ArcGIS Online? First of all, you cannot publish, okay? You cannot publish the ArcGIS Online as a web tool or GP service. But inside ArcGIS Online, you can add item. You can choose a type called service, which is a GP service. So if you have a URL, if you have a server URL of a GP service or web tool, you can add those items in ArcGIS Online. But those are just for viewing purpose, which means like, if you log in Portal, if you log in ArcGIS Online, and you can see those items shows up. But right now you cannot use it. I'm sure, like, we will consider this in the future, to provide the web tool in ArcGIS Online. That will be the direction. There's no timeline yet, but that will be one of the direction we're gearing towards in the future. Next one is there any advantage publishing web tools on code or over ArcGIS Pro UI? Well, so publishing using code, if you anything publishing with script, which means you can automate it. And let's say if you want to publish the same web tool to several servers, right, to different server or different enterprise, you can use script to publish. That will save the repetitive process rather than publishing from UI. Or sometimes for maintenance purpose or for testing purpose, you want to like update the service or the web tool often. Then you can use the script to publish that. So you can save this repetitive process. Next one is, can you create an ArcGIS server connection file from Python with a good old ArcMap, like Python 2.7? It's possible, yes. The server connection file is definitely available if you publish from ArcMap. That's the old way, yes. Unfortunately, from Python, from ArcGIS Pro, you cannot create a server connection file from Pro. But we'll try to convince the team who is in charge of the function, and we will try to make it available in the future. The next question is, can you publish without logging in Portal for map service? It is possible. Okay, so for other type of services, they publish directly to the portal. Okay, all the data, they reside in the portal. The web tool is different. The web tool is the real thing. The real task is service. So when you publish, the service is on the server, but there's items in the portal. This equivalent, those items would link to the GP service. Now those items is for users to browse through portal. So to publish web tool, no, you cannot publish without logging in. You have to log in exact portal that you want to publish to. Okay, so next one is, what is the platform, the Python for debugging? I saw Simon using it in the show. Simon, do you want to reply that one?
Yeah, or they replied. So I was using PyCharm. That's my favorite. But you can use any IDEs of your choice. It's totally your personal choice or personal preference. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. I think there's also something called PDB, and that's for if you have dots prompt, you have a command prompt you want to debug, you can use PDB. Okay. All right, the last one is standalone server configuration going to be deprecated? Actually, when we started the web tool, we didn't even think about standalone server, and somehow there are some users on they for whatever reason they still want to use standalone server. So actually it's the opposite. You know, we start without standalone server configuration, but then because the users requested, and so we add the standalone server configuration. You know, so to publish as a GP service. Now those are the server side, but on the client side, you know, ArcGIS ArcMap is going to be deprecated, you know, from 10.8 on. So from now on, there's no new version of ArcMap. Okay, it's only Pro, and we really encourage everyone to using ArcGIS Pro to publish rather than ArcMap. So with that, So with that, we go through the whole list. Simon, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I see there are still a few questions we haven't got a chance to reply in the Q&A. I probably just address them here. I see Andrew posted, will this process change with the new architecture of Enterprise on Kubernetes? We're still working on supporting publishing web tools to Kubernetes. But I mean, even after that, I don't think there is anything changed on the publisher side. Someone asked, experience staging failed, especially when trying to publish from many after one another via Pro UI. What will be the reason be for that? So for staging failed, I think you need to double check what's your where are your data sources, and sometimes maybe reopen the Pro can help. But other than that, it's really case by case. It can be very specific. Someone asked,
let me add a little bit about that one, because so that one's kind of common. Yeah. So if that happens, if staging error, I mean, look at there should be log, you know. So follow the log and see what's the message out there, and also try to see if that's a common case, like if does it happen for every single cases, or just for the one you're publishing, right? So if that's just for the one you're publishing, then maybe something is wrong about the model or the data, you know. So make sure you kind of narrow down the scope. That's probably the best way. Okay.
I think we are kind of running out of time. Shing, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah. Well, thanks for everybody. All those questions, you know, and comments are very fruitful, very useful. And you know, if you haven't, like give the answer for the polls, please do. You know, we appreciate it, and we're looking forward to more questions and comments. You know, and if you have a question, please go to that Ask Experts. Okay. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, guys. And I know there are still one or two questions we haven't covered yet, but please do go to the our experts, and our colleagues can connect you to us from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.